At my father's funeral, just as they lowered the casket into the ground, my stepbrother stood up and said, loud enough for everyone to hear, "He left her nothing, because she's not really his." The words hit me like a slap across the face. My hands started shaking. I turned to look at him, thinking maybe he was joking. Maybe grief had twisted his sense of what was appropriate. But there was no humor in his eyes, just cold certainty. Then my uncle, Ellis, nodded. He didn't say a word. He just nodded like that statement was the final truth, like it was something everyone had agreed upon behind my back. I couldn't breathe. My chest tightened, and the quiet hum of whispered reactions around the gravesite started to spin into one long, unbearable silence. My mother was gone. My father had just been buried, and now, somehow, in front of 100 people, I was being told I didn't belong to him. I looked around, desperate for someone, anyone to stand up for me. My father's friends were there, colleagues, family friends I'd known since I was little, but no one said anything. They just looked away or stared at the ground like I was some unwanted guest at my own father's farewell. I wanted to scream. I wanted to shout, "That's not true. He was my father. He raised me. He tucked me in at night. He taught me how to draw blueprints and how to plant sunflowers so the roots wouldn't drown. He gave me everything." But my voice was stuck somewhere deep in my chest. And then, just as I thought I might collapse, a woman from the back row stood up. I didn't recognize her. She looked like she had come straight from the office. Gray pencil skirt, practical heels, hair in a tight bun. She didn't flinch. She didn't hesitate. She walked forward, steady and calm, and said, "Actually, I worked with Michael for 20 years, and he asked me to hand her this when he died." She turned to me and held out a small, sealed wooden box. All eyes shifted to me. For a moment, nobody moved. The breeze stopped. The moment hung in the air like a suspended breath. I stared at the box, unsure whether to take it. My heart pounded so loud I could hear it over the murmuring crowd. Grant looked at her like she'd broken some secret agreement. My uncle clenched his jaw. The woman took one more step forward. He said to make sure she got it, if they ever tried to take everything from her. Everything inside me screamed to reach for it. Because in that moment I knew this wasn't just a box. This wasn't just some envelope or keepsake. This was something my father had left behind for me, knowing exactly what they would do. And what was inside that box changed everything. Everything I believed about my family, about myself, about why my father always looked so tired those last few years. I didn't lose him that day. I found out who he really was, and who I really am. My name is Adira Rains. I'm 28 years old, and up until my father's funeral, I thought I understood where I came from. I grew up in a quiet neighborhood outside Richmond, Virginia, in a modest craftsman home my father helped design. My mother died when I was 12. Cancer, the kind that doesn't give you a second chance. After she was gone, it was just me and my dad, Michael Rains, architect, widower, quiet, complicated man. He was the kind of father who didn't always know what to say, but always knew how to show up. He packed my lunches with handwritten notes, even when I was old enough to roll my eyes at them. He came to every art show, even the ones where I only had one drawing taped up on the back wall. He taught me how to hold a measuring tape properly before he taught me to drive. He remarried when I was 15. Her name was Diane. She was polished, elegant, always smiling with her lips, but never her eyes. She moved in with her son, Grant, who was a few years older than me. Overnight, our quiet home turned into something colder, sharper. I don't think Diane ever said a cruel word to me directly, but I always felt like an inconvenience, a leftover from a life she didn't want to include. Grant made it worse. He treated me like I didn't belong, like I was just someone his mother was forced to tolerate. At first, I tried to connect with him. I offered to share space, to be kind, but he would make little comments when my father wasn't around, mocking my hair, my art, calling me the charity kid. I told my dad once, and he just said, "He's adjusting. Give it time." So I gave it time, years of it. I went away to college for a degree in graphic design, moved into my own apartment, and started building a life. My father and I stayed close, though. We still talked weekly. He still sent me sketches of houses he was dreaming up, and I would text him photos of murals or odd architecture that reminded me of him. He never said it outright, but I think part of him felt guilty about how things turned out at home. He would sometimes say things like, "I wish things had been simpler for you," or "I know I haven't always protected you the way I should." I didn't push him. I didn't need an apology. I just wanted him to know I was okay, that I still loved him, that I understood. But something changed in the last year of his life. He started missing our weekly calls. When we did speak, he sounded distracted, nervous, like something was weighing on him. I chalked it up to aging, stress. Maybe the firm was pressuring him to retire and he wasn't ready. Then I got the call. He'd had a heart attack. They said it was sudden, peaceful, no suffering. I didn't believe that part. He had suffered for years. He just never let anyone see it. The funeral was held 3 days later. Diane made all the arrangements. She didn't ask me about the flowers, the photos, the music. I offered to help. She smiled and said, "It's already handled." When I arrived, I noticed I wasn't listed in the printed program. My name wasn't mentioned during the speeches. When I stood to speak, Diane gave a little cough, like she was surprised I'd try to insert myself. Still, I spoke. I told them about the time my dad stayed up all night helping me finish a model of a tiny city for my 7th grade project. I told them how he used to keep a tiny notebook in his glove compartment where he wrote down places he wanted to take me. He called it Adira's Adventures. It had over 50 entries. We only got to 12. People nodded. Some smiled. But the warmth I expected wasn't there. After the service, I stood beside the casket as people paid their respects. A few gave me polite hugs. Others skipped past me entirely. Grant stood nearby, smug and stiff in a black suit that looked custom-made. He kept glancing at me like I was standing in the wrong place. I felt like an outsider at my own father's goodbye. I felt like something was being kept from me, but I didn't know what. Not yet. After the service, most of the guests moved toward the reception area behind the chapel. It was one of those multi-purpose rooms with folding chairs, punch, and finger sandwiches that no one really wanted to eat. I stayed back for a moment, watching as the casket was wheeled away. I wasn't ready to be surrounded by people who barely acknowledged me. When I finally walked into the room, I felt every eye land on me. Conversations paused. Diane was standing near the buffet table, glass of white wine in hand, talking to one of my dad's old business partners like she was hosting a gala instead of mourning her husband. Grant was off to the side talking with Uncle Ellis. Their heads were close together, their expressions sharp and private. I started toward the far wall, looking for a quiet corner. I had barely made it 3 steps when Grant raised his voice. "Let's just clear the air," he said, turning toward the center of the room. People looked up, confused, some still holding paper plates. He kept going. "There's been a lot of confusion today about family, about who belongs and who doesn't." I froze. He didn't say my name, but he didn't have to. He looked straight at me. "My father left behind a very clear will," he said, "and there's a reason she isn't mentioned. It's because she's not really his daughter." The room went completely silent. Dishes stopped clinking. A woman near the front gasped under her breath. I blinked, stunned. I opened my mouth to speak, but I couldn't find a single word. It was like the floor had dropped out beneath me. Then Uncle Ellis stepped forward and nodded. "Michael made things clear to us long ago. The estate goes to blood family. That was his wish." My hands started shaking. I felt heat rush to my face. I tried to speak, but I couldn't make my voice work. "I don't know what game you're playing," I finally said, my voice trembling, "but he raised me. I am his daughter." Grant crossed his arms. "You were taken in, raised, sure, but biologically, you're not one of us, you never were." He said it like he was giving a fact, like he was reciting a weather report. I looked around the room. Not one person spoke up for me. A few avoided my gaze. Others just watched with tight expressions, like this was a show and they were waiting for the next act. My heart pounded in my chest. I felt small, like I had shrunk inside myself. My throat burned, but I refused to cry. "Not here, not in front of them. How dare you," I said, more to myself than anyone else. "He loved me. You think a last name or DNA changes that?" Ellis shrugged. "We're just honoring what he put in writing." That was when I realized something wasn't right. My father was deliberate. He planned everything. The man carried 3 pens in his suit pocket in case one ran out. He never would have left me out of his will without saying something to me first. not unless he was forced to or manipulated. I stepped back. My pulse was racing. I could hear it in my ears. And just when I thought the moment couldn't get more surreal, a voice from the back of the room broke through. "Actually," the woman said, stepping forward with a calm authority that silenced everyone, "I worked with Michael for over 20 years. She was neatly dressed, professional, maybe in her 50s. I had never seen her before, but she moved with the kind of confidence that only comes from knowing you have nothing to hide. She looked directly at me and held up a small wooden box, smooth and polished, no bigger than a shoebox. He asked me to give this to Adira after he passed. He told me to wait until someone tried to take what was hers." Grant scoffed. "And who exactly are you?" The woman turned to him with a level gaze. "I'm someone he trusted more than either of you." She looked back at me and stepped forward. "He said you'd need this." My eyes locked on the box. My heart was thudding so hard it hurt. I didn't know what was inside. I didn't know why he hadn't just told me whatever it was while he was still alive. But I knew one thing with absolute clarity. My father left something behind for me, and he knew this moment was coming. The box felt heavier than it looked, not in weight, but in meaning. Every pair of eyes in that room was watching me, waiting to see what I would do. Grant stood frozen, his smirk gone. Diane was across the room, pretending to look disinterested, but I saw the way her fingers tightened around her wine glass. Uncle Ellis looked like he wanted to say something, but even he stayed silent. The woman, Lena, she later introduced herself, held the box out with both hands. Her voice was steady when she said, "He told me to wait until this moment. He was very clear. He knew they might try to erase you." I took it from her slowly, my fingers brushing the grain of the wood. It was smooth, well-crafted, something my father would have appreciated. There was no lock, just a simple latch. I didn't move right away. Part of me didn't want to open it in front of them. I felt exposed, raw, like every part of me was on display and still being judged. But then I looked at Grant, standing there with his arms crossed like he'd already won. I looked at my uncle, a man who once gave me birthday cards without signing them, and I thought of my father, how tired he'd looked in the last few years, how distant, how distracted. Maybe this was why. Maybe carrying this secret was the weight that wore him down. I walked toward the table at the front of the room, set the box down, and opened it. Inside was a sealed envelope, thick with paper, and a USB flash drive tucked into the corner. On top was a folded note with my name written in his handwriting. I recognized it instantly. The same slant, the same sharp lines. I unfolded it with shaking fingers. "Adira, if you're reading this, it means they did exactly what I feared. I didn't want it to come to this. I wanted to protect you while I was alive. I thought I had more time. I'm sorry I didn't tell you sooner. I didn't want you to carry the weight of it all before you had to. You are my daughter in every way that matters, and also in the way they will try to deny." I felt the breath catch in my throat. My hands tightened around the paper. "Inside this envelope is your original birth certificate, not the one they tampered with after your mother died, the real one. I kept it hidden because I didn't trust them. You'll also find documents for a private trust I created years ago. Everything I couldn't protect publicly, I set aside for you in secret. It's yours, because you are mine." I looked up from the letter. For a moment, no one moved. Then I reached into the envelope and pulled out the birth certificate. It was aged but preserved. There, printed clearly under Father's name, was Michael Rains. My knees nearly buckled. I didn't speak. I just held it up. There were audible gasps. Someone in the back whispered something and it spread like a ripple. Uncle Ellis took a step forward, his face hardening. "That could be forged," he said. Lena shook her head. "He gave it to me the day he updated his private will. He made sure it was witnessed and notarized. I have copies. You can challenge it if you want, but you'll lose." Grant looked like someone had pulled the ground out from under him. Diane turned her back, her entire posture stiff. I turned to Lena. "The flash drive?" I asked. She nodded. "He said it was a message. For you." Someone handed me a laptop from the reception table. I plugged it in. The screen lit up and his face appeared. There was my father, sitting in his home office. He looked tired but peaceful. His eyes were full of something I hadn't seen in a long time. Clarity. Adira, he said, if you're seeing this, then I failed to protect you while I was alive, but I will not let them erase you. I know what they think. I know what they'll try to say, but I am your father, not just by blood, but by choice, by love, by every memory we shared. He paused. I didn't fight hard enough when they started pulling me away from you. I let guilt and fear silence me, but I never stopped being your dad. And everything that ever mattered to me, the drawings, the house, the trust I created in your name, it's all yours. I want you to have it, and I want you to stand tall because you are everything I ever hoped a daughter would be. The video ended. The silence in the room was deafening. That was the moment everything shifted. I wasn't the outsider anymore. I wasn't the forgotten child. I was his daughter. Fully, completely, undeniably. No one spoke. The air in the reception room had changed. A moment ago, it had been thick with smugness and silent judgment. Now, it was heavy with disbelief. People who had been avoiding eye contact with me were suddenly leaning forward, trying to see the screen, trying to understand what they had just witnessed. I closed the laptop gently, my fingers lingering on the lid as if touching it kept my father close for 1 second longer. Lena stepped beside me, her face calm and certain. Michael didn't want his legacy controlled by people who twisted his intentions. He prepared everything legally. This isn't a loophole. It's his final word. Grant stepped forward. None of this changes the will. The official one was read last week. Lena looked at him without blinking. That was the public will. There's another one, private, held by his personal attorney, not the firm. It names Adira as the sole heir to his private estate. The room stirred again. Grant's confidence cracked. I saw it in his jaw, how he clenched it like a child, refusing to believe he was losing a game he thought was rigged in his favor. Uncle Ellis moved forward, sharp and deliberate. This is being blown out of proportion. We don't know what Michael was going through at the end. He was clearly confused, emotional. You can't seriously expect this to override a legal process. Lena didn't even flinch. I spoke with him every week until the day he died. His mind was clear. He was intentional. He knew exactly what he was doing, and he knew you would say that. She reached into her briefcase and pulled out a file. She handed it to me. Inside are signed documents, video testimony, and the legal transfer of the trust. He left it all to you, Adira. Not because of sentiment, because it was right. I opened the folder and saw the notarized trust documents, the dated legal letters from his personal lawyer, and a note addressed simply, "To the court, challenged." I didn't need the court's validation. I already had my father's, but still, I turned to face the room. To those of you who stood silent when they tried to erase me, I hope you're seeing now what silence costs, I said, my voice steadier than I expected. You watched them question my place at my own father's funeral. You watched them say I didn't belong, and no one said a word. No one interrupted. A few people lowered their eyes. One woman, someone I vaguely remembered from his office, wiped a tear and nodded. I don't want revenge. I don't want to fight. I just want what he intended me to have. What he built for me. What he preserved, even when he was afraid. Grant scoffed. You really think this changes anything? You can't fake blood. I turned to him. I don't need to fake anything. The truth is written in ink. It's written in the life he gave me, in every story I carry about him, in the plans we made together. You only want what he left behind. I carry who he was. That was when Diane finally spoke. She had been standing near the door the entire time, silent and detached, but now she turned, her voice cold and clipped. I told him this would happen, she said. I told him his guilt would come back to haunt him. He always let you take up too much space. I stepped forward. He gave me space because I was his daughter, because he loved me. You couldn't erase that, not with silence, not with lies. She walked out. Grant didn't follow. Uncle Ellis looked around, realizing he had lost whatever support he thought he had. He muttered something under his breath and stormed out after her. The room slowly returned to itself. People began whispering again, but this time, it wasn't about me being an outsider. It was about them. The ones who tried to keep this buried. The ones who underestimated what a father's love could protect. I stood in that room, holding the letter, the trust, the video, the proof that I belonged. Not because of documents or money, but because my father saw me. He knew what they would try to do, and he made sure I wouldn't be left defenseless. He didn't leave me behind. He left me everything. I went back to the house 2 days later, the one where I spent most of my childhood, the one with the creaky steps and the sunroom my father built by hand, board by board. The legal process was already underway, but Lena assured me it was just a formality now. The trust was airtight. My name was on everything that mattered. Still, I didn't walk in like someone who had won something. I walked in like someone returning home after years of being pushed out. I stepped through the front door and just stood in the entryway. The same smell was there, sawdust, lemon oil, and something softer I could never name but always recognized. I ran my hand along the wooden railing he carved with tiny marks from his old chisel set. Most people wouldn't notice them, but I did. I always had. This house was full of his fingerprints. I found the courage to go into his study last. It was exactly as he had left it. His blue drafting pencils were arranged in perfect rows. His favorite sketches were framed on the wall. There was a photo of me and him on his desk, one I hadn't seen in years. I was maybe 10. We were at the lake, and he had one arm around my shoulders and a grin that looked so alive it hurt to see. I sat in his chair and let myself cry for the first time since the funeral. Not because I was broken, but because I finally had space to grieve him without being questioned, without being watched like I didn't belong. That's when I realized what he had really given me. It wasn't money or land or trust documents. It wasn't even the birth certificate or the video. It was validation. It was the choice to protect me in a way he couldn't while he was alive. He knew he had stayed silent too long. He knew what Diane and Ellis were capable of. He saw how Grant dismissed me, tried to erase me. And he refused to let that be the final word. He gave me back my name. I spent the next few weeks going through his things. Lena helped me sort through the papers, and together we uncovered personal journals, handwritten letters, even old blueprints he had sketched just for fun. He left notes in the margins. Some were addressed to me. Others were clearly just his thoughts, little reminders to himself. Every page was a layer of the man I missed, the man I was still getting to know. I eventually found a small notebook labeled Adira's Adventures, tucked into a drawer beneath a stack of invoices. He hadn't written in it since I was in high school, but the last entry was a note. Trip to Italy. Just us. One day. We never made that trip, but now I carry that notebook with me everywhere. It reminds me that he never stopped planning a future with me in it. Lena stayed in my life. We still talk weekly. She's become a guide in a way I didn't know I needed, someone who saw my father clearly and never questioned my place beside him. She helped me set up the architecture scholarship in his name, one that gives young artists and designers a path he would have been proud of. As for Grant, Diane, and Uncle Ellis, I haven't heard from them since the court confirmed the trust. They never apologized. I didn't expect them to. They live in a world where power means more than connection. I've let that go. What I've learned is this. Sometimes the people who love you the most don't always know how to protect you when it matters. But if they truly love you, they'll find a way to make it right. My father made mistakes. He let others control too much. But in the end, he found his voice. And with it, he gave mine back to me. This story isn't about a box or a will. It's about identity. About what it means to be seen and chosen, not just born. It's about a father who couldn't always say the right things, but who loved me enough to make sure the world couldn't silence me after he was gone. And that will always be enough. If this story meant something to you, if you've ever felt unseen, forgotten, or questioned in your own family, I hope you know this. Your truth matters. Your voice matters. And no one has the right to take that from you. Thank you for watching and for holding space for this story. If it moved you, please like the video, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and drop a comment below. I'd love to know your thoughts or hear your story too. And if you want more real stories that speak from the heart, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. There's so much more to come. You deserve to be seen, you deserve to be heard, and you are not alone.